be our last meeting, and all we're going to do is work a few bills today, and we'll see how smooth that goes. That we should definitely be out of here in our 55 minutes, so a good portion of us can go to judiciary. So first on the agenda, I'd like to work the Secretary of State's bills so that we have one package. And I have Jason online. So Jason, can you describe House Bill 2391 to us, remind us, and then House Bill 2297?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2391, if you recall, was the bill primarily changing the annual reporting requirements for business entities with the Secretary of State to a biennial filing requirement. They would file every 2 years, depending on the year of their formation. Those changes would go into effect on January 1st of 2023. The other amendments in the bill were clarifying some filing statutes, such as definition of street address and professional association abbreviations. There was also a repeal of 3 statutes regarding blanket music licenses that those statutes still require an annual filing of those licenses for copyrighted music, and those statutes would be repealed. Those other statutory amendments would go into effect on July 1st of this year. And then, Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 2297 was the Secretary of State bill regarding the publication of documents by the Secretary of State. Primarily, this bill would allow the Secretary to contract with a third party for the publication services, for printing and binding services that are necessary for the Secretary of State. It would also amend the statutes regarding the session laws, the Kansas Register, and Kansas Administrative Regulations to allow the Secretary to fix the price of those publications without needing to adopt new rules and regulations. I would also allow the Secretary to publish the Kansas Register in an electronic format. Those amendments would all go into effect on July 1st of this year if enacted.
Thank you, Jason. And then I've written on my notes, House Bill 2391 passed the House 121-3 and 2297 124-0. Is that what you have also?
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay. All right. I know on 2391, we do have an amendment that we were discussing when we left. Would you like to offer your amendment, Senator Francisco?
I would. It's the balloon amendment, and it's a change. The Secretary of State's office was wanting us to add a provision for businesses to be able to reinstate their business by paying the past 10 years of the reports due. And they had given us an amendment that referred to the 5 most recent biennial reporting or the 10 most recent annual reports. This proposed amendment would simply say for all past due reports for the immediately preceding 10 years and then payments. And this, I think, will eliminate some of the confusion, especially 10 years from now when we are going to mostly have biennial reports. So I'd be happy to stand for any questions on the amendment.
And I see the Secretary of State's office spokesperson giving the thumbs up, so you approve. So do we have, Marcy or Senator Francis, would you like to make a motion?
I would make a motion. I'll simply say that the worked with both the Secretary of State's staff and the reviser to come to this agreement and wording. So
okay,
I move my amendment.
So I have a motion. Do I have second? Senator Dahl seconds. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. All right, amendment is adopted. So the next piece of this bill, House Bill 2297, as it is the same topic, Secretary of State, so we have one bill to carry across the Senate floor. I would entertain a motion to add the contents of House Bill 2297 into House Bill 2391. Who would like to make that motion?
So moved.
Senator Thompson,
I guess in this case, would we remove the contents of 2297 and insert it into 2391? Is that the correct?
yes, that's
motion?
correct. Jason, do we have that right?
Yes, you're just moving the contents of 2297 into 2391.
All right.
That is my motion,
All
Madam
right.
Chair.
Senator Thompson moves, Senator Francisco seconds.
I would second with the
Discussion.
understanding we're not removing anything, we're simply adding new language in addition.
Yes, that's our intent. All right, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. All right, motion passes. All right, now we'll need to have a motion to pass House Bill 2391 as amended out favorably. Senator Thompson,
Move to pass 2391 as amended out favorably.
do I have a second? Senator Erickson? So sorry. We'll catch you on the next one. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. All right, motion passes. So House Bill 2391 as amended is headed to the floor. All right, so now we'll move on to our next topic. This is open meetings in Cora, basically. So we have House Bill 2390, House Bill 2096, and House Bill 2292 to consider putting together, working with the reviser. Jason, would you give us a briefing on each one of those?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 2390 is the annual Cora exceptions extension bill, or to make those exceptions permanent. And so that was the bill that contained many statutory amendments to various exceptions that were enacted 5 years ago in the 2016 legislative session. Those exceptions are either being made permanent or being extended under the provisions of House Bill 2390. You did have in your packets descriptions of those exceptions that are being made permanent or extended. House Bill 2096 was a bill that amended the Open Records Statute 45-221. Under this law, there is an exception currently for certain individuals. If there's a public agency website that is searchable and can identify the home address or home ownership of a certain individuals, such as law enforcement officers and other court personnel, federal, state, and municipal judges, those individuals can request that their information be restricted from public access. House Bill 2096 adds various individuals to that exception, including employees of the Department of Corrections, employees of the judicial branch and municipal courts, and administrative law judges, and members of the State Board of Tax Appeals and the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. And Madam Chair, as you requested, I look back, and this same bill was introduced and worked last year as Senate Bill 331, and it did pass the Senate on final action last year by a vote of 40-0. Finally, House Bill 2292 is also a open records exception bill. This provides an exception for cybersecurity assessments, plans, and vulnerabilities. I believe the Secretary of State's office testified on this bill at the hearing in the committee on the need to just clarify that those types of emergency and security plans would also be subject to the general exception for such security plans.
Thank you, Jason. So 2390 would be our House bill that would be the bill that we would amend these other two bills into. Looking at House Bill 2292, the Secretary of State's brought us, I would entertain a motion to move the contents of House Bill 2292 into House Bill 2390. Senator Francisco.
I would make that motion.
Motion. Is there a second? Second from Senator Warren. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. So now the last piece of that is House Bill 2096. I do want to mention to the committee, if you recall yesterday, a House member had asked, or Wednesday had asked us to consider adding in an additional person or different additional group, and I suggested that he bring a bill next year to do that, so we won't discuss that House possible amendment at this point. So what we're looking at is House Bill 2096 that we didn't modify in any way. If there's any questions for the revisor on that bill before, otherwise I would entertain a motion to move House Bill 2096 into 2390. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a motion, but just discussion on the bill itself. So I didn't know if that would be in order or how you wanted to handle that. Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Let's discuss that before we have the motion to move it in. Would you like to proceed?
Sure, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So committee, we discussed this at our last hearing on Wednesday, and I think you heard some of my concerns with the breadth of Section 51 on page 7 of the bill regarding the records of a public agency on a public website that would no longer be searchable for these categories of government employees that would be added into statute if this bill were to become law. And you heard my concerns that, for instance, if you need to search the records because you were attacked by somebody's dog and you need to find out where to serve process on that person. If they happen to also be a government employee in one of these areas of government, you wouldn't be able to do that. I find it interesting that we are the Transparency and Ethics Committee, yet we are being less transparent regarding public records that are available on private citizens and about private citizens, but not necessarily these government employees. For instance, and I understand the intent of the bill, I do, that some of these categories are public-facing officials, if you will, but I haven't heard that without this bill that they wouldn't be willing to serve in the jobs that they have. So I think we are creating a dangerous precedent if we go down this road. We are a citizen government. We're a citizen legislature. We have citizen judges, and I think that if we go this route, again, we are setting a precedent that I don't think is one we want to do. And I will say, in this, it's too broad, Section 51, because it also includes employees who are not public-facing. And so for that reason, I am speaking in opposition, in strong opposition to House Bill 2096. I understand it passed the Senate 39-0 whatnot last session. I wasn't in the Senate, so I haven't had an opportunity to vote no on this, but I do rise in strong opposition to 2096. Thank you. There's got to be a way to do this if that's the policy we want to do, but it's certainly not 2096. Thank you.
Senator McGinn.
I was just curious, Jason knows what it passed in the House last year, or did it not get to the House? That's why it's here.
Madam Chair, it went over to the House and was referred to the House Committee on Judiciary, which had a hearing on March 9th, and then no action was taken due to the session being cut short due to the pandemic. Or are you talking 2096 this year? I'm sorry. This year, let me check the vote real quick. It passed the House 122-0.
My only other question would be for Senator Warren. I too have a little bit of, I guess, discomfort with this, but have you thought about how you could tighten that down?
Madam
Yes,
Chair, if you're,
Yes, Senator Warren.
thank you, Madam Chair. Um, you know, I've thought a little bit about it, but I'm not so sure that's the policy we want to have. For instance, for judges, every time a judge position comes open, there's plenty of applicants applying for the job. Even though this bill doesn't exist or this doesn't become law to provide this extra protection for them that aren't available for the litigants who would be coming in front of the judge. So I don't have an amendment, and that's, I don't, for probably that reason that I just don't think this is a road that we necessarily want to go down. I think if it's a problem for the particular employee, we do have processes in law already that I think would be available to help them.
Senator Oletha Fascadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, do you know who originally brought this issue forward over in the House?
Jason, can you help us with that question?
Yes, Madam Chair, it appears that the bill was requested by Representative Patton on behalf of the Kansas Sheriff's Association in the House Committee on Judiciary.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one reference that may be overly broad would be on line 40 and an employee of a municipal court. Because on line 34, we have a municipal judge. And I don't know what other employees for a municipal court there might be that would be affected. Perhaps Senator Warren would have a better idea.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you pointing out the line 40 issue there, an employee of a municipal court. Again, that would be, you know, a backroom file clerk who's not public facing at all. And I would point out in the same vein on line 31, an employee of the Department of Corrections. And on line 32, an employee of the judicial branch. This is just far too broad, and it's against, I would say, the public policy is, you know, we have government, a citizen-run government, and, you know, I understand the intent, it's overly broad, and I think a dangerous precedent, even for those public-facing officials, if you will. Again, we never have a dearth of people applying to be judges at any level, and it's not a complaint that I've heard anyway. So it's just, I think we need to carefully consider the public policy, and I understand it passed the House unanimously, but quite frankly, if there's not a member who is thinking in this regard and to raise these sort of issues, it might be overlooked. So I don't mean to disparage our colleagues in the House, but sometimes, you know, we have different ways of looking at things, each of us individually, and this is something that I saw that would be something that the Kansas Legislature, as setting public policy, should tread carefully.
Senator McGinn.
Well, I don't know if I have my notes in the wrong packet, but I am need to ask Jason. I'm looking through here and trying to find who testified. Who testified in our committee? Kelly wants to answer that.
Senator Warren.
Madam Chair, thank you. Joe Molina, on behalf of the Kansas Bar Association, was the main proponent, and I have my notes here. We also, if I may, Madam Chair, I happen to have the daily agenda from that day. Sheriff Jeff Easter of Sedgwick County, right. And the bill does already provide protection for a law enforcement officer. So law enforcement officers are already in statute protected, as I'm sure the Sheriff's Association Probably originally brought that when the statute became enacted, but law enforcement officers are already included in statute. And they would still continue to have this protection.
Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's kind of like trepidation to challenge you. I'm not necessarily challenging you, but I really respect your opinions, and I listened to them very carefully on the floor of the Senate. As I look at this bill, they're concerned about other people. They're becoming attacked, and our society seems to be polarized more and more, and whatever. And so they're looking at ways to try to help protect them. But yet, if you really want to get their name and address, you can get it. I don't, everybody said that. You might have to pay $5. I don't know how you use search and with that. So I'm just not overly as much concerned as you are with your legal mind looking at it. And I'm just looking at it as saying, well, I think it's a pretty good deal. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Senator Haley.
my deal on. During the course of the bill's hearing, I was thinking about this show I saw where a judge's family, I think it was her son or something, was attacked and killed. Her family was killed. That they had gotten through the records to find out where this judge's husband and son attacked in the household, and it came out that there had been an unfavorable ruling. It was something on a show. That was what kept playing back and forth in my mind when we were hearing 2096. But I agree with certainly the point that it is overly broad. I would hope that we could amend this bill, that maybe we could have it more directly apply to those members of the bench specifically who might be making a decision or be involved procedurally with those decisions, who might be subject to it. But I do agree that it's too broad. During the testimony that we heard, also from I have the notes here too, from the district court, they seem to concur that there's some members of the courthouse, I think they mentioned some parts of the staff that didn't need to be covered in this bill. But I would hope that we could send some provision of it out for greater protection. As has been said, a lot of this information will still be available through other means, but they'll have to be more aggressive in pursuing it than just to pull up a public record and have an address right there listed.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have very mixed feelings on this as well for some of the concerns that Senator Warren raises, also concern for protecting our public servants. I guess my concern, more from a personal standpoint, is when my husband and I were principals, we had fairly frequently our tires slashed, a brick thrown through our front window. Since carrying the Fairness in Women's Sports bill on the floor of the Senate, I've had people at my house all hours of the night leaving things in our yard. So I guess my question is, who all should be protected from this? Who all do we exclude from this in the name of public service? And it's, yes, our first responders, our officers in correctional, they are obviously in a position due to their work where they are encountering this, but there are a whole plethora of other public servants who I think could make a case for wanting to be excluded from public information. So I don't have an answer. I'm just concerned about who all is included and excluded in this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator McGinn.
I just had a suggestion process-wise. We already have 2292 in 2390. And we were thinking about putting 2096 in. I would suggest that we leave 2292 in 2390 by itself and pass out 2096 by itself separately and let it get scrutinized on the floor. And that way it's not going to bog down another bill. If it dies on the floor, it dies. If it gets amended on the floor, maybe it'll get better.
Senator Francisco, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had that same suggestion. But I also want to share with the committee that the research assistant, Jill, gave me some information about what sites she was able to find in just a quick search. And it really is the appraiser or register of deeds. So I think another way to deal with this next year might be to think about what information is being provided and is that information that's appropriate to have on those public access sites. But I think between now and then, working this bill on its own is an appropriate direction.
So Senator McGinn, would you have a motion to pass out 2390 as amended? So I have a motion. Just a moment. I'm so sorry, Senator Straub. Would you like to comment before we move on? I'm sorry. How about we'll pass our easy one out first and we'll come back to this? Okay, so.
I'll make a motion to move out 2390 with 2292 inserted in it.
Do I have a second? Second from Senator Francisco. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Right, motion passes. So we have House Bill 2390 as amended, headed to the floor. So let's keep discussing House Bill 2096. And Senator Straub, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I did. Because these employees, correctional officers and whatnot are not elected officials in the first place, how is their name being shared with inmates or detainees? Wouldn't it be common sense maybe not to share your full name with those people? Maybe just go by your first name?
Would you like the revisor to enhance on that a little bit? Jason, do you have a thought on that question?
Madam Chair, I don't know the procedure. That's probably a better question for the Department of Corrections or the Sheriff's Association as to the interactions between the employees and potentially the inmates of these facilities and how those names could possibly be released. I'm not sure practically how that happens.
I see Ed Klump in the audience. Are you comfortable chatting with us about this, Ed, although you weren't prepared at all? If you have any
Try to
thoughts
always
for
be
us.
prepared, Madam Chair.
So,
Ed Klump,
Ed-
I do represent the Kansas Sheriff's Association. Well, there's several ways. As you recall, public employee records are open records, so a person can see the names of anybody who works for a public agency. So without going into those and closing those, they can't access personal identifiable information there, but they can certainly get the name. But more importantly, in the corrections arena, which is what this bill was about, I want to bring everybody back to why we brought this bill. Our concern, and Senator Warren, this goes back to a comment you made about the sworn officers are still covered, the law enforcement officers. We have many of our jails today that are not staffed by sworn law enforcement officers. They are staffed by civilian, non-sworn corrections officers, and they're not covered under that title of law enforcement officer. our intent in bringing this bill was to cover these employees that are in the jails working side by side with these sometimes very violent offenders and don't like, what goes on in the jail. Remember that the jail is a closed environment, and we spend a lot of time literally living with these people that are in the jail. And it would be very difficult to hide what your name is in that environment. We brought this as a practical matter. We've had experiences, I think Sheriff Easter related some experiences they had down there with people going to the homes of corrections officers and disturbing their families and whatnot. So that was our focus. And that's why we brought the bill. But I don't think it would be practical to be able to assume that a person's name is not going to be revealed in that kind of environment where you're working with these people every day. I hope that answers your question.
Would you entertain some questions if we have some for you? All right, as Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Klum, can you explain what the difference is between a community correctional services officer and a local correction officer or local detention officer?
Local correction or local detention officer is really pretty synonymous, but it's two different terms that local governments use for their non-sworn jailers or corrections officers. What was the other one? The corrections service officers or
right now,
community service officers?
Yeah, right now we include a community correctional services officer. So we're adding a local correctional officer or local detention officer.
And that first one, if I'm not mistaken, is your probation officers.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee probation officer is already included in the statute. So it's probation officer is already included. To Senator Reichman's comment that, well, you could pay $5 and find this information. Well, then do we want to put private commercial entities in charge of this information then? And they could raise the fees from $5 to $500, or they could be inaccurate in their transcribing the information. And again, I mean, we're a public-run, citizen-run government at all levels, and it's a balancing act. I mean, that's what we're put here to do, is to balance, and I understand. And maybe there's a better way to do it, or if you're an employee who has specific concerns, that there be a process that you go through to prove you have a concern and that there's a reason, because there are non-nefarious reasons that you might need to have the address of the person, not because you know them in their public entity, but some other, again, valid, non-nefarious reasons. So it is a balancing act here. We're here to set public policy from a state level, and I'm glad we're giving this serious thought. It's just not ready, I don't think.
Well, committee, in the interest of time, we do have one more bill. So seems to me we have two choices here. We leave it in committee to keep working on for next year, or we move it out to the Senate floor and we work on it in public on the Senate floor. Senator McGinn?
Could make a motion to move it out and then communicate with leadership as to whether or not it needs to come above the line. It sits under there. And then if it just sits under there this year and doesn't become above the line, they'll send it back to committee and come up with new ideas or something. But at least since we're on our final day, it'd be below the line.
That sounds like a very good idea to me. Would that be a motion?
I'll make a motion to move House Bill 2390 out.
Do I have a second? Senator Warren. 2096.
2096, thank you.
I was not the second on that, Madam Chair. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought,
Senator Dahl.
okay, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. Now discussion. All right, Senator Haley.
Well, I support it. I didn't know if we wanted to tweak a bit of the concerns before, but we'll just wait and try to amend it then. I mean, maybe take one or two of the things that bothered us out, but that's fine.
Senator McKinn.
Thank you. I think I asked that question earlier. Does somebody have an idea to make it better? And we've got 15 minutes to get our work.
Right. Well, perhaps we'll just,
I mean, do you have an amendment?
no, I don't. It would be
Okay.
conceptual only, but it would be based on some of the breadth or some of the, enumerated that probably shouldn't be included along that line.
So I think when it comes above the line, and I mean, it should only come above the line prime time if somebody has suggested amendments to make it better. Otherwise, nothing.
Thank you.
Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the one that I pointed out, an employee of a municipal court, I think we could take out, but I don't think it's worth reprinting the bill until we also look at, an employee of the judicial branch or some of those other things. So I think it's probably better to leave it the way it is and not print it twice if we do have those changes.
All right, any more discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no? I believe the ayes have it. Motion passes. Okay, last bill. House Bill 2090 on its own. Jason, can you give us an update, a brief on it?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, you'll recall House Bill 2090 was the bill that came over from the House regarding vacancies in elected positions and government employment positions when the individual has been called up for military service. And the statute is amended so that the officer or employee has to complete a form informing their appointing authority that temporary vacancy is going to be created due to their military call-up. And then if the individual is a partisan elective officer, then the appointive authority is to follow the statutory procedures for filling state legislative seats and appointing a temporary replacement. If it's a nonpartisan elected position or an employee position, then the appointed authority can just take their normal action in filling that temporary vacancy. The bill will go into effect on July 1st, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And if I remember right, this was on the consent calendar in the House. Was it a unanimous vote?
Let me look real quick. I believe so. Yes, it was 125-0 in the House. It was not put on consent calendar, but it was a unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Jason on the base bill? Okay, I understand we have an amendment we were working on with Senator Straub. So we'll start with you first, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No changes to the actual bill, just an attachment in addition to it, because in the process of filling those vacancies, it obviously involves the precinct committee men and women. And having gone through this myself and knowing many others that have also, it's sometimes difficult to get a complete and accurate list of the contact information for those precinct committee men and women. So my amendment would be an attachment. I think it's being handed out here. And really all of those, the main change would be the addition on the very last, the last page of the attachment, the very last page of your handout. That's underlined in blue letters. All precinct committee men, committee women, and appointees shall report to the county election officer within 3 days after the election or appointment of such committee man, committee woman, or appointee, their address, phone number, and if available, such person's email address. And that's simply for candidates who are running to fill those vacancies to be able to access that information so that they can communicate with the body that's going to be filling that vacancy.
Thank you. Would you like to move your amendment, Senator, and then we'll get a second, and then we'll do discussion?
Yes, I would move my amendment. Thank you.
Do we have a second? Senator Reichman seconds. Have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Oh, so discussion. Yes, discussion. I'm trying to get us out on
I
time.
understand. I understand. Thank you, Madam Chair. I support it. We just had this discussion previously on the other bill. All this information being made available, I'm not sure after we verify the correct address of, that they're in the actual precinct. I don't know. I don't understand what is the problem that we're trying to correct with this legislation. I've listened to the discussion. I know the House had a bill similarly they didn't take any action on. I just don't know where this came from and what it's trying to get at and why the additional disclosure is necessary, especially in light of the fact we just had this discussion on the other bill. What was it, 2096?
Senator, I saw Senator Straub first, and then I'll come back. Senator Warren. Senator Straub.
I think I can explain from personal experience, when there is a vacancy in an elected office, the candidates who will be vying for that seat usually they have to contact the county clerk's office to get a list of the precinct committee men and women. And sometimes those lists are complete with contact information, and sometimes they're not. But initially, those precinct committee men and women can file to run for that office. Normally, when a candidate is campaigning for an office, they're campaigning to the entire, public. But in the process of filling a vacancy, only those precinct committee men and women and the official committee men and women will have a vote in filling that vacancy. So it's very important that the candidate be able to communicate with those committee men and women prior to that election. Most lists are complete, but sometimes when a party chair appoints an individual to fill that position, sometimes not all of their information is shared, or it's not shared with the county clerk in a timely manner. All of those things are listed in statute. The 3-day, the reason I went with report their information to the county clerk within 3 days is because that's the time frame that's already listed that a party chair must provide that information to the county clerk. So this is just simply 2 sentences, actually 1 sentence, 2 lines, 2.5 lines to clarify that information needs to be shared with the county clerk's office.
Well, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator Straub. If a precinct committee person do their public service, people ask me all the time, I'll become precinct committee, but what do I have to do? What does it entail? But if they some of them want to be an enigma. They don't want to be out there or be what's so involved. They don't want to get a slew of people calling them to help with the snow removal, but they want to participate in party politics. And I appreciate the explanation. I just don't know if it's not, to use a previous overly broad in what we're requiring, in quotes, the ill-defined position of precinct committee person to do, to include information that can be publicly reached, even if it's just to have candidates for office solicit them for their support. If I understand correctly what it is you're saying we need it for.
Would you like to comment? And then we'll have Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand your concern, but precinct committee men and women are basically elected officials, just like we are, just at a smaller level. They're just, another piece of the puzzle here. But they serve a very important role in filling vacancies. So because they are representing the general public in their precinct, it's very important that their information, that they be able to be contacted and that everything is on file, because when filling these vacancies, and that's part of the reason for the military service member bill, is when filling those vacancies, it's usually on a very short timeline. Actually, Mr. Barker is here. He can probably answer some of those questions a little bit more in detail than I can.
Point of clarification, Madam Chair. So I'm a precinct committee man. I have been for 30 years. I don't list my address. I list a post office box. It's not, it says my address, but I list a post office box. It has been verified that I do reside in the precinct by the election commissioner. They verified my address, but for public, I'm on a PO box, just point of information.
Let's go to Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think Senator Straub made the comments that I would have made about this is an elected position, you're representing the public, and it actually goes along with what I was saying about 2096, but not for the reasons that other senators were thinking. I was opposed to 2096 because it doesn't require the disclosure, and this does. So that's why I was opposed to 2096 and in favor of 2090. Thank you.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question. I know it says 3 days. Should that be 3 business days just to cover holidays or 3-day weekends, or just a small question?
I think we had that question last time and Jason had it. Jason, did you remember a response on that it's recognized as?
Yes,
Do you
when it's
remember that
not
question?
clarified in statute, the standard statutory interpretation is it's 3 business days. It's the days on which the office would be open and able to receive that information.
Senator Francisco and then Senator Dahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I very much appreciate what Senator Straub has done. This was a bill that was introduced in the House, and I think it can be very helpful to those people. I had some concerns about asking a precinct committee man or woman to be the one that's reporting that information for either an election or an appointment. So I have a substitute amendment, and I'd like it to be passed out.
Jason, can you help us out here? We have a substitute motion. Do we need a second? Do we have discussion?
You have a substitute motion by Senator Francisco, and so then you take a second and have discussion on the substitute motion.
Okay, so then I need to ask for a second. Okay, Senator Haley seconds. Then we need a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Madam Chair, you'll
No
have
vote.
discussion.
I keep trying to skip that part, don't I? Discussion, then we'll have a vote.
I did second for.
You did say, yes,
Or discussion for
Or-
the, I haven't seen the amendment, but just for the point of discussion.
yes.
Okay, I may not agree, it's only for discussion.
So Senator Francisco, go ahead and explain your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the amendment that I'm offering affects the same section, but it does a couple of things differently. It asks the county chairperson who's making the appointments, when they notify the county election officer of the appointment, they also report the names, addresses, phone numbers, and if available, email addresses. So that's done by the county chair. So it's not a separate action needed by those precinct committee men and women. And then I'm also adding that each county election officer, and this is on C, shall collect the name, address, phone number, and if available, email address of each person filing for election as a committee man or committee woman, so that that county election officer would get not only the name and address, they would get the other information that's being sought. And then each county election officer shall maintain a public list of all current precinct committee men and committee women that have been elected. So this takes the onus off the precinct committee men and women and puts it on the county chair and the of each party and the county election officer. The other thing I did, because I read the rest of the wording. And this is in the middle of section 1. Right now, we say that any vacancy occurring in the office of precinct committee man or committee woman shall be promptly filled. But in fact, there's sometimes when you can't find somebody to do it, or there's other circumstances. So I'm suggesting that we change that to may. So a county party chairperson may fill the vacancy of any vacant precinct committee man or woman. And I'd stand for questions that we don't have much time for.
You think 55 minutes is a lot of time. Senator Straw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is a substitute amendment, I think this changes the intent of what my amendment intended to do. It intended to make that elected official responsible for reporting their information to the county clerk or county election officer, not to put more work on a county election officer. I do think as electeds, it's our responsibility to file and provide that information on our own free will, but it needs to be, obviously when we file for office, we have to provide all this information. So because of filling vacancies, the reason that in my amendment that the precinct committee man and woman must provide their actual information is because we don't want to put fault on someone else for providing false contact information or inaccurate contact information. So unfortunately, the substitute amendment does not, it doesn't fulfill the need of what my amendment was getting at. I understand Senator Francisco's intention here, but that's not the intention of my amendment. And also on the word shall or may, I believe it should still say shall. We don't want to give opportunity for the vacancy to be improperly filled. So thank you.
Senator Francisco, and then if it's no other questions, you should probably vote on this and move on so we kick a bill out. And then Senator McGinn, you have a comment also. So Senator Francisco and then Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The way to fill a vacancy is already established, so it will be properly filled. It can only be filled by that county chairperson. I have served as a precinct person. The first thing I did after the election was not go through our Kansas statutes to see what I needed to do. And if we're not adding any work that I know of for the county election officer, because they have to get that information and maintain it either way. So if I'm correct, and maybe we can just with a nod, when I filed for legislature, I gave them my name, address, had an opportunity for a phone number and the email address. So this would do it as we have done it with the Secretary of State's office.
Senator McGinn.
I guess I just haven't paid too close of attention because I've been curious about this for a while. I'm a precinct committee woman. I go to the Sedgwick County website. The application has all of this information that I have to fill out, and I have to have it notarized.
All right, so Senator Straub and then Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You're correct. When a person files for that position, when those vacancies, when a precinct committee man or woman vacancy is filled, the party chair can just provide a name, really, and that's where usually the discrepancy and the omissions in some of this information is. So my amendment would be correcting those omissions, but you're correct. For people who have filed for those positions, we have that information.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up to Senator Straub's earlier comment that if you have a third party collecting this and putting this out for public information, that again was one of my concerns with 2096. If we're requiring you've got to pay $5 to the commercial entity to properly report the information that should otherwise just be made public, You have some transcription problems, some accuracy problems, or maybe they overlook things. Anyway, I'm not sure about the substitute amendment or not. I do like on the substitute amendment, it requires maintaining a public list of all current precinct committee men and committee women. That isn't in the original amendment, so I kind of like a combination of both, but anyway.
So we really need to move on. So we have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Now we need to vote on this. So we're voting on the substitute motion. So all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion fails. So now we're back on the original motion, if I'm right, Jason. Is he on?
Oh,
Jason,
yes, you're
we're back
correct.
on the
You're correct,
original
Madam
motion
Chair.
when the substitute fails. And do we have discussion again? Do we have any more discussion on Senator Straub's? Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we need to work on this further, I would prefer that we pass out the base bill as presented, and then either have language that we've had a chance to discuss and agree on as an amendment on the floor, or we take this up next year.
Any other discussion before we vote? Senator Straub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a question if a public list is maintained. Actually, the county clerks or county election officers do maintain a list of those precinct committee men and women because they are elected offices. So that I think is already it's already assumed and already done as practice. So I don't think it's necessary to put that, to write that again in law. I would move my amendment if there's no other opposition.
Did we do that already? I think we had a motion. Did we have a motion, Randy, and a second already? Yeah, we did. So discussion, we've had discussion. Senator Francisco?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If there's things that we want done, it's probably best to state what those should be. So I didn't find another place that was in law for the county clerk, but I will look into that more before we discuss this on the floor.
Thank you, Senator Francisco. In interest of time, so we get to Senator Warren's committee. I believe it's time for us to vote. So we're voting on the Straub amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion passes. Okay, now I need a motion to send out House Bill 2090 as amended favorably for passage. Who would like to do that? Senator Straub?
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that we pass House Bill 2090 favorably as amended.
Do I have a second? Senator Thompson. Discussion? Okay, let's vote on that. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Okay, so we have House Bill 2090 as amended headed to the Senate floor. So thank you very much, committee. I wish we had 5 more minutes at least. So I want to remind you, take your files with you, or we'll recycle those, or if you like those, we can deliver them to your office. So thank you, and we've done really
Madam
good
Chair?
work this session. Oh, Senator Haley, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We are going to leave then the one that we didn't. Did we pass that out? The one regarding the 2096? That's just going to stay in.
We did pass that out,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
unamended, and we didn't put it in a package. It's on its own. You're adjourned.